Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Inessa and I'm an indie author and I publish under the pen name A.N. Sage. I write in YA and in the genres of fantasy, sci-fi, and paranormal mystery. And today is another Sage Advice video day. If you're not familiar with the series, it is a bunch of videos where I share with you the hundreds and thousands and millions of mistakes that I made on my journey as an indie author when I was just kind of trying to figure everything out for myself in hopes that you will not make the same mistakes. So I'm hoping to spare you the time wasted, the money, and just the mental piece of it all. Today, we are talking about author branding and what it means to brand yourself as an author in 2021 and in today's time, and why it's important and what things to avoid and things like that. I thought it was appropriate to talk about author branding because I did just do an entire overhaul of my author brand. And so we will start this video with my mistake. So originally when I was creating kind of the persona, my author persona for my pen name, the visuals, who I wanted to represent myself as, I did not take my content or my books into account. I made it very editorial, and so it was very minimal. I do really love the way that looks, but I write YA fantasy for the most part, and so it didn't quite mesh as well as it probably should have. So I decided to completely redo everything, to do a full overhaul of my author brand, and it was a lot of sweat and tears and money, and it took quite some time. But I love the way that the new brand looks. I do love it, and I wish I'd gone for this kind of like visual and content appeal first originally, so I wouldn't have to do all of this. It just matches all my books, everything I do, who I am, just perfectly, right? It's got that like fantasy, witchy, mystery kind of look, but it's still playful enough, but also it's still kind of classy. Like there's no like bright weird colors. It's still there's minimal hints in the logo that I really like, so it doesn't hit you over the head. So just overall, it's exactly what I wanted, and I wish I had the foresight to see it earlier. And so that is the mistake that landed me here into this video. So what is an author brand, right? An author brand, or a brand in general, is a way to describe who you are as a person through visuals and content presentation. So it's essentially who you're going to present yourself as to the world, to your readers. Now, I come from a marketing kind of background on the creative side, but I've worked with a lot with rebranding clients, not authors, but different companies and things like that. And so I thought I understood what branding is. Clearly, I didn't. Or at least I didn't understand it in the author scope of things. An author brand is a little bit different from when you're branding a product or a company, right? Because you're branding a person, kind of like celebrity branding in a way. You are creating this persona of who you are and what you want to show, and it has to be as close to yourself as possible, but it also has to represent the type of books that you write. And so it's hard to find that niche, but I have a couple of quick tips to help you get into that niche and figure out what your brand is without the headache. I think people tend to overthink the whole author brand idea. They set very, very strict rules for themselves, and that could really hinder your performance as an author in general. And if you're always thinking about what your author brand, what you're going to say, which you should think about it, but if that's constantly on your mind, it's going to weigh you down. And so there's easy things to do, small things that you can do to get yourself into this author brand journey without driving yourself crazy, really. One of the first things is identify your reader. First and foremost, figure out who you're going to be speaking to, who is going to be on your social platforms, who's following you, who's in your newsletter, who's in your Facebook group if you have one. Figure out who it is you're talking to. These are your new friends, right? right? These are people who support you. They love your books. And so you need to speak their language in a way, but that language should also be your language. And so you want to find out what you have in common with your readers and connect to them that way. It's all about human connection in the end, even if it's online. Your readers want to see the person behind the works. It's why when it comes to just the big authors, that's why we all watch interviews with those authors, why we watch their panels. We want to know who they are. We want to hear their voice, both physically and kind of more symbolically, I guess. We want to see what they have to say, and it makes us feel more connected to their books because we know the person that they're attached to. It's also really important that your readers see that there is a person behind the books that they read. Just because I think it's easier to understand a book if you know who wrote it. It doesn't mean that your book is really going to be anything like you. I mean, you could be writing some super creepy horror, right? And that doesn't mean that you chop people up in your basement on the weekends. But if they see the person who wrote it, like for me personally, this is just my own opinion, of course, but when I read a book and I then hear like a panel where the author spoke, I just automatically have this like deep-rooted connection to the book that I might have not had before, just because I see, oh my God, well, this person, I really enjoyed what they had to say. I enjoy their personality. And so I'm now drawn to the book a bit more. And if I haven't read their books because I enjoy their personality, I might be more inclined to buy their books, right? And so finding and identifying your reader is a pretty important first step. You also want to find your brand voice. What does that mean? Your brand voice is essentially who you are, but a little bit more structured. So who I am online is very much who I am in real life. However, it's kind of like meeting someone for the first time, right? Like I make sure that I'm a little bit more put together slightly. I perhaps don't cuss every second word. And I'm more intentional with what I say and what I present. And so figuring out what that brand voice of yours is and what it is that you're going to be talking about, the things that are important to you that you think might be important to your readers as well. These are the things you kind of need to figure out ahead of time when you're forming your author brand. I know that I love planners. I love stationery. And so I know part of my brand will always be talking about stationery, planning, plotting, things that relate to my books and that relate to how I run my author business and things like that. I know that my readers will enjoy it because hopefully they enjoy the same things that I do. And I've learned throughout the years that yes, that is something that they also enjoy. And so I give them more of that. I also share a lot of the books I'm reading. In my newsletter, I have a newsletter that goes out once a month, and I always have book recommendations in it, or like things that I'm reading that they might want to check out, because if they like my books, then they'll probably like what I like to read as well. And I want to give that back to them, save them some research, right? Or recommend new TBR things. We all love a TBR, right? So that's something that I really enjoy doing. I don't spend so much time on I don't know, like things that might not relate to me. Like I don't talk too much about TV shows, even though I do watch TV shows. But I find that when I posted things, I did trial and errors of what works, what people want to see. I didn't get much of an engagement about it. But when I post witchy type things or things about crystals or things that I find on Etsy that are really cool, that's when people really interact more. And so I keep giving them that, right? Like you find out what your readers want to see and you give them that. You're kind of like a newscaster in a way, or a TV show, like we said. But you give people what they want, right? And then that kind of leads me into the next point, which is don't always talk just about your books. The hard sell, like door-to-door salesmanship approach, it doesn't work as well on social media. There's certain social channels where that might work. I've seen it work a little better on TikTok, but still not as much. But people don't want to be like beat over the head that yes, you're an author and yes, you have a book. I mean, if you have a launch, yes, of course, definitely post about it more, talk about more. more, shout it from the rooftops. But every day you are more than just your books. You are a person, and that is what they want to see on social, on your some of your website, not all of it. Most of your website should be kind of like a catalog for your books, I think. But in social media, I mean, social media is there for socializing, like it's in the name. So make sure you're socializing with people. And imagine if you were to meet any of these people in real life, like let's say you go to a dinner party or something and somebody is talking to you about their day and all you're doing is talking about your books. Like that's like a horrible way to interact with someone, right? So you don't want to do that online either. People are there to get to know you, to talk to you, to get a new friend out of you, even though it might not be the same kind of friendship. And they are like readers who buy your books, but they're supporting you. And so you should find a way to support them in return. And that comes from your content, right? And your voice and what you're putting out there as a brand of your authorship. And then you want to think about like your visuals and the content that you have on there. For me, this is the biggest part of the rebrand that really gave me quite a headache because I had to rebrand all the visuals. There was a new logo involved that had to get designed and went through a lot of edits. All the colors had to be changed to kind of work more with that moody wording and writing that I do. And so the visuals had to change a lot. I also had to change how I present things. So my Instagram, if you've been on it, has a very rigid kind of grid. It's set up a certain way. The presets that I use for the images, like when I edit them, they all have to be a certain way. And so everything has to flow together. Same for the stories. Same for TikTok. It's TikTok. Might be hungry. Same for TikTok and like Facebook. My Facebook page is a mirror of my Instagram. However, my Facebook group is a lot more interactive. I play games. I share news articles. I share snippets of my books. I ask people questions. And so there's a difference between all these platforms. And so the visuals and the content that's going on there, I had to rebrand that as well. And so you want to think about that stuff. How are you going to extend your author brand, your voice, across all these different platforms where they're all a little bit different and tailored to the type of platform they are and the type of readers that are on those platforms, but they still say who you are. They summarize who you are in a very distinct and specific way. And then the last kind of thing you want to think about is the actual platforms. When you're starting out, it's very easy to want to be on everything, right? Like we see somebody doing this and succeeding. We see someone going on TikTok and all of a sudden they have like thousands of sales. It's very easy to get pulled in different directions. But as an author, you need to decide which direction you really need to go. I know for myself for sure, Twitter and Pinterest do not interest me as just who I am. And so I'm not going to spend my time on them because really, if they don't interest me, then the readers that are like me and enjoy my books, it might not interest them either. I mean, maybe Pinterest will, but not in the same way that I think I would like to use it as. And so I stay away from those platforms, right? There's different platforms I just don't really want. So I mostly stick to Instagram, to Facebook, and now TikTok because I do enjoy TikTok. I'm on it a lot. In my free time, I watch videos on it. And so I like it and I'm going to be on it, right? I'll be on it until I don't like it anymore. So make those decisions. Don't be on everything because if you're always thinking about content that you have to put out and creating more content for all these different platforms because they all have different requirements of what you need to do, then when are you writing your books, right? When are you doing your actual job as an author, as a writer? And then also part of those platforms is your website. I know when you're starting out, especially when funds are concerned and budgeting, it might be hard to kind of like splurge on the website. And I completely get that. The only thing I would recommend is if you can, if the possibility is there, try to find some kind of website or whoever's hosting it, where you have the ability to grow as your authorship grows. I am now only on Squarespace. I wasn't before. I was on WordPress before. I found that I had to do a lot of my own coding. It was breaking all the time. I couldn't get it to look the way I wanted to. And if I did, I would have to hire someone to do that for me and change all the templates from the back end. And it was a big headache for me personally. I mean, if you're a WordPress pro, then all the power to you. I have huge respect for you. I am not. And Squarespace works for me. It's easy. I find the templates are easier to use. It's drag and drop. It doesn't waste any time for me. It took me this website that I just rebranded. It took me about 3 days to redo the entire thing bottom up, right? So that works for me. And so find out like what you can spend comfortably on the best version of where you are right now, and figure out how you can grow from there, because you might find that if you're on a very restrictive site platform, you might not be able to add things in the future. Let's say you just start out as a place where you kind of just have like links to where your books are on Amazon, but then you decide you want to sell paperback copies. And now that's a whole can of worms, right? Because it might not work for the way that your website is set up and the way the wireframe is set up on your website. So take that into consideration as well, because yes, it might be more of an investment, maybe time-wise or financially at the beginning. But when you hit that like roadblock and plateau, like I did when I had to rebrand everything, I wish that I didn't do that. I wish I thought of that ahead of time and invested in it ahead of time, because it was like a bit of a headache. I love how it looks now, but my God, there was a lot of sleepless nights. So those are kind of my main tips for author branding, what it is. Let me know what you think. If you have any tips of your own that you can think of, or if you have any questions. I know this was just a quick one, but I'm sure there's more to talk about with author branding. I think the most important thing to remember is just don't stress about it. Your author brand is who you are. It should be who you are. So just be yourself and go from there. I think it's easy to get lost in terminology like branding, and it's easy to go overboard with it. But at the end of the day, you figure out your logo, figure out what content you want to put out, find your readers, find a general kind of look that you enjoy and that works with the type of work that you put out there, and then go from there. You can always expand and grow as you go, and you will. You might have an overhaul of the brand like I did. Who knows? But that's the fun of it, right? Like we change, we adapt, and we grow as authors and writers and as people. And so the most important thing, I think, for author branding is to connect with people. It's why we're all here. It's what your books are for. I write my books so that they reach people, so people can find something in them. And so I do that on my platforms as well, and in my newsletter and in my groups and things like that. So just be yourself, I think, is the main lesson here. I know it sounds cheesy, but at the end of the day, you are your brand. So be you and your brand will follow in a way, right? So with that said, I hope you guys are enjoying the weather. We had a bit of slight rain here today, but it's super sunny now, and I'm so excited. We finally have sunshine and warmth. And I mean, if you live in Canada like I do, that is very precious around here because we don't get a lot of it. So when we do get it, we like to enjoy it. So I'm seeing a lot of park and cottage days in my future, as long as we can leave the province, then we shall see. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful sunny week, and I hope you stay magical, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye.